My story today involves a class action just got filed against West Coast Cure and Fire brands. It involves close to 24, I think the count is, of products from these two businesses. They're all owned by the same company, but they're under West Coast Cure and Fire. And it turns out that the allegation is they were lab shopping, which is a huge problem here in California. And this case is filed as a class action, which invites anybody who's bought these products that are listed in this complaint since June of 2020, and they're going to be allowed to join this class action. And this whole story revolves around failed tests. And this person that's the plaintiff, that's the putative class plaintiff, they call it, went out and bought products under these brand names and had them independently tested. And virtually every one of them was contaminated with what we call a Category 1 pesticide that is illegal to have in anything, in any amount. And the majority of them also had contamination from what is called a Category 2 pesticide in amounts that were multiple times what was allowed. Now, the way this is supposed to work in California is that you send your product, you call a testing lab, they send people out to your distribution company, they collect the samples, which are mandated by statute as to how many samples you have to take. You take them back with a chain of custody, you do your testing, and the test results are supposed to be immediately notified to the DCC and put into our track and trace system. Well, as you can imagine, people have found ways to get around this. And one of the things that seems to have happened here is that a failed test somehow got buried. Now, I'm not sure how they justified this, but my clients typically do R&D testing, which means there's no certificate of analysis that's attached to it. We're just trying to find out if a product has any contaminants before someone buys or sells it. And that system doesn't enter into metric. You just send it out, hey, I took a couple of buds off something, I want to make sure it's clean. You get the results back, and I advise my clients don't buy anything unless you've got some sort of an R&D test to show it's not contaminated. These involve the official test. Someone's supposed to come from a lab, collect it, take it back, and your COA, your certificate analysis, is supposed to list the analytics, the way they did it. And this is all on paper. And so when you get a COA that goes out which says this stuff is clean or it's within limits, and someone buys it and it's not, now we've got the situation we have here. And it's not just one lab. I think this complaint says there's 50 labs in California, and I haven't done a count recently, but
I think
there's
that's
a lot
typo.
of competition for.
I think that's a typo. I think it's 5.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition for business, okay? And so these labs have been willing to stretch the truth a little bit. And when someone goes to a dispensary and buys something that is contaminated with a pesticide, that is not post-production solvents or anything like that. That was there from the gate. And if there's a COA that says these things were clean, I mean, if I was representing these people, I'd have some criminal attorneys on board right now, because this shit's just about to go wild. Because right now they're just going after West Coast Cure. But at some point, these testing labs are going to get wrapped up in this, because if I was to represent West Coast Cure, I'd file cross complaints against anybody and everybody touch these things, bring them all to the party to bring some more money into this. Okay, but also these are official state documents, and if somebody signs these and what they're saying is not true, you've got criminal problems here. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So, and I also note that yesterday our Department of Cannabis Control recalled one of West Coast Cure's products. Now, I didn't go back and check it against the list in this complaint, but you can bet that they're on the state radar. Okay, so this is going to open up their pocketbooks, and we will see how tight their corporation is and who's going to get wrapped up in this. This is going to get very expensive, and there's, if I'm a betting man, these labs that did this are in a position to have their licenses suspended or revoked, and some people that'll be criminally charged here. So I'm going to throw this back at you guys for some discussion. But lab testing and lab shopping are a huge problem in the industry, especially when you have pretty tight controls over what's supposed to be in these products. And this industry is full of a lot of scofflaws who follow the rules when they want to, and when they're pinched and there's economic problems, they do some things that are liable to get them in some trouble here. So back at you guys. What do you think about this?
Dale, so first thing, the DCC did send out a mandatory recall yesterday in regards with some West Coast Cure vape cartridge. And it's batch number VPPL234457, and said it was packaged by Alchemist DM. And it says on or after 9/26/2023. But it doesn't say what the SKUs are called as far as like what the strains of what the consumer would buy. So I feel like the DCC needs to step up their work in regards, because they know what all of the as far as these batch numbers and whatnot, they know what SKUs and the names are. So they need to be telling people that. But there's a couple of questions that I have in regards with this lawsuit, Dale, because to my understanding, and I could be wrong on this, but to my understanding that there were no COAs that were included in this lawsuit. That these are all just allegations. There was no
attached or even referenced.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a problem with that. I feel like this could definitely be some type of vindictive type of thing towards them. And apparently there's a lot of information, like where they obtain these samples and whatnot, was not included in the lawsuit as well. There's no chain of custody or anything like that. And so these very well could have been someone that was black marketing West Coast Cure products, and the West Coast Cure very well could have not even been a part of any of these sales.
I mean, I think at the end of it, Dave, this mostly comes down to a lab, right? And I've seen this happen in other states. I know there was labs that would do it in Oklahoma when they were trying to get business, and we had parts of a farm that might be testing hot. I've seen labs that'll accept samples as R&D and test it as R&D initially, and then if it passes, then they convert it from an R&D to an official test, so it doesn't need to be retested. But that would be my bet on how they're doing this. Obviously, I don't know what systems they're using. There should be controls on that, but I know that that's the way that they usually get around it. And I would always make a point at any place that I work that that's a liability in the long run, because if you get shelf tested, if you get randomly selected, and you have hot product on the shelf, then it's still a big problem. In fact, it might be a bigger problem than having to destroy a batch.
I agree with you though, Dale. I think that. I feel that the cross complaint on the lab is going to be a big thing. I don't think any of these labs are thinking about it, and I'm not going to fault any brand that lab shops, because that's just the state of the industry, because we have every single consumer trying to buy something based off of some antiquated test number that just doesn't even make sense in the first place. And the state hasn't came in to say, oh, you know what, you guys have to test this way, and this is how it has to be done. They just recently started to do that. And so I'm not going to fault any brand for lab shopping. Well,
I would agree with you, unless, of course, there's a fail, and
I would agree.
The company knows there was a fail.
I agree with that part. Yeah. I agree with that part.
And that's a bigger problem.
Yes. Yeah.
And as I read this, I didn't see a lot of chain of custody information either, Jason.
Exactly.
And so that would be a way to attack the complaint. And I don't remember specifically seeing that this plaintiff said, I purchased these myself and then I had them tested. It's kind of vague about that.
Exactly.
But if I was advising people, it would be you keep the receipts, you keep the packaging, make note of where you got it, all that kind of stuff. So there is documented evidence, and I would challenge them.
Yeah.
And ultimately, bring everybody to the party here that I knew from West Coast Cure that had done any of these testings, and let them bring their insurance policies and their attorneys in to try to defend this. As I said, I'd have some criminal attorneys already doing an internal investigation to find out who in a management position here knew that these things failed, and they wink, nod, put them out in the system if that's exactly what happened. Because the DCC knows about them. They clearly know about them, but why they haven't done anything, I don't have an answer to that.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the science director or the director of the lab could be charged with fraud here, right? Is that accurate, Dale?
Yeah, if they committed perjury by signing a document that they knew was false, yeah, that's a crime.
Hold on, Dale. Wouldn't the onerous fall on whoever owns the lab, not the chief scientific officer?
Well, the captain of the ship's clearly going to get in trouble. But if you have a PhD, in California required to have a PhD to be signing off on these labs, that person is
they could lose that license. That individual could lose that license, their PhD.
Well, a PhD isn't a license. You could be charged, and you could be telling your buddies in the chow line in the joint what you were doing to get you there. And yeah, my PhD ain't going to help me a bit when you're eating with a spork. And that'd be my biggest. Money's money, but someone's liable to go to jail for this if this is true.
Whoever was signing off on the COA at the bottom of it is the person that potentially committed perjury, is what you're saying.
Interesting. Yeah. You don't think
for the owner of the business, owner of the lab, they're looking at getting their license revoked, maybe not be able to get one back, and that's a huge problem. Investors could then sue them all. I mean, there's a lot of problems that roll from this. But in the industry, it's about time they shine some light on some practices going on in the state. But the dispensary doesn't have any idea about this. They're getting something with a clean COA, and you're liable to get sucked into a bad product case here, too.
It sounds like, Dale, what you're saying is that shit runs downhill.
And to the right. The dispensaries are there.
It's the plumber's proverb.
It's the plumber's yeah. Oh man! Speaking of backups, we're going to go to a commercial. And we're going to be right back.